A lot of people have been thinking, well, maybe I could just hire an attorney to write up a contract for me. You have your own commissions that you need to pay as you get representation from a buyer's agent. A lot of the times people don't really understand the value of an agent, and that relationship is going to crumble really quickly. Hey, like what would be the difference between you and somebody on Redfin, for instance? What's going on, guys? Thank you so much for joining us on another episode for Living in El Paso. And with that being said, I want to talk to you guys about something that quite frankly has been really an interesting conversation, to say the least. And I'm pretty sure regardless of where you're at in your market, you want to listen to this, because this is something that if you know how to understand the benefits that a buyer or listing agent brings to the table, you're going to want to actually utilize somebody that's going to have your best interest. So with that being said, today I want to talk to you about why you should have your own representation. I want to start with like the obvious elephant in the room. A lot of people have been thinking, well, if anything, maybe I could just hire an attorney to write up a contract for me, and instead of me having to pay for a buyer's agent in the event. And if you haven't seen that video where we talked about the NAR settlement, I'll link that down below. But just basically to give you a rundown, again, there was a settlement where there was a lot of people that were not being upfront about the commissions and how they're paid. Commissions have always been negotiable, so please watch that video. But overall, one of the biggest things that was happening is that people were not understanding that as a buyer, you have your own commissions that you need to pay as you get representation from a buyer's agent, just like a seller has their own representation by a listing agent. Now, the reality was that for the longest time, a seller is willing to actually pay for the commissions of the buyer's agent because they know that the listing agent is doing the marketing to put the property out there for a buyer's agent to come in and actually go and bring their buyer. Now, the fun part about this whole settlement was that now attorneys got involved. And attorneys, this is something that I mentioned in my last video, but the reality is that just like there's good teachers, there's bad teachers, just like there is good attorneys, there's bad attorneys, and there's always going to be somebody that is looking to make some money one way or another. The reason this is important to notate is because right now, a lot of people think, well, maybe in a situation where I don't want to go and be represented by the buyer's agent because I don't want to pay for the 3% or whatever you negotiated with that person, they're thinking they can go directly with the listing agent. Here's the thing with that. If you go directly with them, they do have a legal contract that enforces they have the best interest of the seller. So therefore, they're not really looking out for you. And please watch that last video that we really go into details about this, because there's probably some questions that you're going to have that will be answered in that video. But the reality is that they are not able to have your best interest because of the fact that they're representing the seller, okay? Now, if you have an intermediary situation, that is completely different. And if you're interested in a video about that, we can certainly do one. But right now, I'm just gonna focus on the obvious. If this person says, okay, I'm gonna go and actually just hire an attorney to write up the contract for me and make an offer. Now it gets a little bit more interesting, because the attorney is only going to give you a contract based off the property that they're writing the contract for. So not only is that gonna get expensive if, let's say, your offer doesn't get accepted on that one property, but two, I wanna know if that actual attorney went with you to the property to see the home and advise you on what maybe you should wanna negotiate, what the concerns of the property might be. And these are just two, to name a few, but I think that this is just a snowball looking to go downhill, because a lot of the times people don't really understand the value of an agent. And I do think that's the fault of the agent, okay? Because if your agent is not able to really elaborate on what their value is, I think you should hit the road jack and find somebody that's going to have your best interest. I recently, actually today, I had a call with a client, and he actually found us on YouTube, and we saw properties over the weekend, the whole shebang. And I was mentioning to this person, I was like, look, he had concerns about the representation. He had concerns about the 3% being on the contract that we have and how that would be negotiated in the event that the seller didn't want to pay for it. All completely valid concerns. But as I mentioned to him, the contract is there to protect you in an event that we need to negotiate. We need to put your best interest above our own. And secondly, and most importantly, we want to work with somebody that you actually trust is going to have your best interest. And I say this because if you don't feel like the person you're working with has your best interest, that relationship is going to crumble really quickly. But it's like, you can, break up with me, but you cannot cheat on me. That's the same level of relationship you should have with your agency. Because if you're working with somebody, you should be able to understand that they have your best interest. Are there people out there that just care about the money? 100%. But then there's also other people that they care about a relationship, because we understand that by establishing a good relationship, you are going to take care of us by recommending us somebody. And I mean, let's not even get into, the whole karma situation. Like, what you put out is what you get back. But that's a whole other conversation. I want to drive my point to, when you're working with the buyer's agent or a listing agent, you really want to understand that they bring value to the table as long as you have done your due diligence of working with the right person. I feel like with this whole situation with commissions, a lot of people sometimes say like, oh, like you're just, worried about your commission and what the difference is going to be. I've seen it happen on a lot of like Facebook groups. People start, getting into it back and forth. And last I checked, none of us work for smiles and rainbows, right? We work to put food on the table for our family and to grow and do whatever it is that you're looking to find your purpose in life. But I say this because there's also a way to earn money, and you don't have to screw over people in order for you to make a living. And this is extremely important, because I feel like with this whole situation that happened, that you see, with the attorneys that got involved and trying to pin everybody against each other, they made a bunch of money. These people that were actually pursuing legal action, they made pennies on the dollar. But the big concern here is that now what's happening is that a lot of these people that are first-time home buyers, they're not understanding, and this is why I'm making this video, that it has always been something that you have your own representation. Therefore, if you go to an open house and that person represents the seller, they're there to represent this seller. They're not there to represent you. They're there to take care of that person. Now, in some situations, there are people that are just sitting in the open house, that they're not actually the listing agent. But it goes back to the whole situation that I mentioned. What level of trust have you been able to get from this person? What value are they bringing to the table? How transparent are they bringing with you? There's been situations where clients have talked to us and they're like, hey, I really want to get X, Y, and Z. And based off what I know from whether that's the market in that area, whether that's how many days on the market the property has been, whatever it is, I'd rather be very upfront with them to let them know, look, I wish I could do all of these things, but the reality is that in order for me to not waste your time, I need to share X, Y, and Z, because if not, you're going to be disappointed with me at the end of the day and you're not going to be happy. So this is extremely important for you to notate. I feel like a lot of times people are not really considering how important it is for you to work with the right people, buyers or sellers, okay? That is the bottom line. So with that, just make sure you're asking the right questions. What exactly are you doing for marketing if you're on the seller side, right? Are you just gonna put it on the MLS, or are you gonna actually run ads for it and make sure that you can get me somebody that wants to buy my home in the event that, no buyers are looking at the property with their buyer's agent? Or if you're on the buyer side, right? What kind of incentives do you have available? What kind of lenders are you working with? What is it right now that you've been able to negotiate for some of the closing costs for your clients? I always like to ask these questions because it is extremely important for me to understand where my client is. If for some reason they're in a situation where they really don't have a lot in reserves for their closing cost, well, I want to make sure I can find them a property that maybe has been on the market for a little bit longer, where I can tell them this one is going to be a great deal because I can negotiate some incentives for you. So just make sure you ask these questions. And the last point I want to really make is make sure that you don't listen to everything online. And this is what I mean by that. When COVID happened, everybody and anybody online that had a phone was literally crying the sky is falling because they were saying do not buy, do not buy, do not buy. A lot of people didn't buy and they regret it with a passion right now because they passed up on some of the best deals that they could have got. I say this because you need to also take your own critical thinking into play. If you are looking for something, you're going to find it, okay? It's like whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right, by Henry Ford, it's the same thing. So if you're looking for something to not trust in this agent, you are already coming at the situation based off a paradigm, based off things that you're reading online that are going to influence your perspective. It's like when you're buying a car and somebody says like, oh, you're really gonna go with a used car? Like, why would you do that? Or somebody says like, oh, you're gonna go with the new car? Why wouldn't you get the used car? Perspectives, right? You're always gonna have two perspectives on either side of the spectrum. Do what's in your best interest. And this is where the alignment with the right people comes into play. This client of mine, hey, like what would be the difference between you and somebody on Redfin, for instance? And for me, I'm like, well, the bottom line is the value that I'm gonna bring. I mean, let alone the fact that I spend over 4 hours on a Saturday viewing houses with you, but the fact that I educated you on the process, the fact that I connected you with the lender, the fact that I made sure that we were able to get you the best interest rates. Now they're not locked in yet because we still don't have the contract under contract, but these are little things that as you're working with somebody, the time that they're taking to answer is extremely important. The time that they're taking to educate you is extremely important. And somebody that is paying for leads on a source like Zillow, Redfin, things of that nature, does that mean that they're bad? Of course not. I don't know them personally, but a lot of the times when you're paying for a service, it happens a lot with like lenders and new builders. When you're just getting leads thrown at you because you're paying for them, the service typically goes down because they didn't have to earn you. They didn't have to earn your trust. You just gave it to them. So with that being said, I hope this video is helpful for you. If you are in a journey of buying or selling a home, we're gonna link down below a few of our videos that we've had, and I'm gonna add the video for NAR for you to better understand the whole settlement situation. And I just wanna appreciate you once again for tuning in. Thank you so much for staying tuned and watching our videos. If there's anything in particular that you're interested in talking about, please feel free to leave us a comment down below so that we can make a video geared around that. With that being said, I hope you have a fantastic day and I will talk to you guys on the next one.